It is time for the long-awaited Eastern Asia guide for beginners in GeoGuessr and OpenGuessr. This is typically one of the easiest regions for beginners, but there's still plenty that beginners do get confused about that we will go over in this video. And hopefully by the end of this, you will become an expert in everything in East Asia. Let's go. We're going to be talking about these countries that are highlighted today in this video. We already did a Central Asia guide, so all those tips are already on the channel. And Southeast Asia has become one of the toughest areas of the world to guess in OpenGuessr, so we're going to leave that for its own video. So the places in red we will be talking about, the places in pink, aka China, has limited coverage. We'll talk about it. And the one place in black, North Korea, well, there's no coverage there. I'm sure you can guess why. We're going to start off here in Mongolia because, quite honestly, Mongolia might be the easiest country to guess in all of OpenGuessr and GeoGuessr. It really is, and there's a few different reasons. One, because they have so many unique cars that it is very, very obvious when you are in Mongolia. This is one of the more famous ones, the big backpack that has been in the game for probably a decade at this point. It's been in the game for quite a long time. This is a typical landscape of Mongolia, pretty flat, pretty barren, very little trees, and in combination with the car, it's usually a lock to get this country. Recently, there have been a few newer ones that still have a bit of a bag on top of the vehicle of a truck. Again, very, very iconic to Mongolia. This blue one right here might be the most unique vehicle in all of the world of Google Street View. Again, Mongolia truck here again. Sometimes they will have this snorkel in the front. Typically, this is a Kenya clue, a very iconic Kenya clue, but they also have it here in Mongolia on quite a few of their vehicles. You may also see a traditional roof rack vehicle when in Mongolia as well. This one has the red mirrors, which is kind of cool. No other place that has a roof rack is going to look like this. Very, very north, very cold. And are we going bowling? No, this is actually the bollard of Mongolia. It looks like a bowling pin. This, again, very, very unique thing to Mongolia. You won't see bollards that look like that anywhere else in the world. So with all these things combined, Mongolia is a very, very easy country. All right, next up we have Russia. Now, obviously, this is a massive country, and today is the Eastern Asia video, so I'm only going to focus on some of the tips that will help you guess Russia over here in the eastern part, including way over here on the Kamchatka Peninsula. This is the furthest east you can go in Russia as far as Google Street View is concerned, and this is actually a fairly easy place to guess because of one, there's a lot of dark gray gravelly roads here. The coverage is pretty overcast, and you will typically see a lot of trees lining the road, kind of like this. It also has a large amount of volcanoes, so if you do see some volcanoes in Russia, this is probably the place to go. You also will see other Russian clues, such as the black bottom of poles here that is found all over the country, of course. And you will see some Cyrillic, some Russian. So that is a great clue for this location. Now, you may see this blue line here that goes up near the city of Yakutsk, heads east and more west. We're going to talk about this area now. And we're going to start with this city to the west. This is Mirny. Now, this whole area is famous for its hazy coverage. Here in Mirny, it is especially true. You can see all the haze in the air from, I believe, to be fires in the area. Here, it is very prevalent. You can tell that there's a smog in the air. The vibe is very orange, isn't it? Once you get east of Yakutsk, you're going to see some beautiful locations. Here, the gravel will be a noticeable darker color, almost brown, but a very dark gray. And these bollards are actually pretty unique to Eastern Russia. They have this skinny stick on the end that kind of points out. These are only found in the eastern half of Russia, and you can just see how skinny they are. So if you see those, you at least should be in the eastern half of the country. Going all the way down to Magadan, you will see some haze in the air, kind of like this, but it is not as bad as that murky coverage we saw earlier. Now, there is coverage that heads down all the way to the North Korean border near Vladivostok. This is typically a pretty mountainous and very green area of Russia, which makes it stand out from the rest of the country. And finally, we have Sakhalin, which is this island that's just north of Hokkaido in Japan. Now, this area is known for its cabbage. Yeah, you heard that correctly. The Sakhalin cabbage is a very famous thing that lines the road of a lot of the roads. Not every road, of course, but there is cabbage everywhere in this particular location at least. So that's a great clue for Sakhalin. And up next we have Japan, and at least in this video, this is the mostly dense covered country that we will talk about. Now, Japan famously uses the low cam, which if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend taking a look at the camera generations video here on the channel, which will go a lot in depth into that. But Basically, we are lower to the ground in this country than others. Japan has very unique infrastructure and architecture, which makes it very different than other countries in this video and in the world in general. This is the first country in this video that actually drives on the left side of the road, and driving direction is a massive clue for this region that we will get into. Japan, it drives on the left. You will also see these things right here on the poles, these black and yellow bars on the poles, which is almost found on every single pole, at least every big pole in the country. That's a great clue for Japan, and this is just a fantastic round for Japan because there are just so many clues here. Here we have a yellow license plate that are found on the key cars. They're not found on every single vehicle, but they are found on quite a few throughout Japan. There is no standard bollard throughout Japan. There are so many different regional bollards in this country. That's very useful to learn, but one thing that they mostly have in common is you will see a circular reflector on them. Now, where it is located is sometimes different. You know, here's the one in the middle, and there's others that are going to be on top. They all kind of look different, but the circular reflector is usually something that they have in common. When you're in some tight urban areas, it's very common to see these mirrors. You can see this in a handful of other Asian countries as well, but Japan really does love them. Another clue is going to be on their poles. You will see this utility plate. Now, this is one of the best clues to region guessing the country of Japan. I won't go into every single one of them because this is the beginner's guide. That's more of an intermediate tip, but if you want to learn that, that will greatly improve your Japanese region guessing. And you guys know that the Japanese language kind of looks like this. It is worth recognizing, and if you can read it, it can definitely help you when pinpointing in the country. And right next door, we have South Korea, which, as you can see from the blue lines, is not very densely covered. There are some pockets here and there. Of course, Jeju Island is covered for the most part. There's a lot missing in South Korea. Now, a great way you can instantly tell you're in South Korea and not Japan is the driving direction. South Korea does drive on the right, which is not the same as Japan. So here in South Korea on the right, Japan on the left. The Korean language, at least for me, is much easier to recognize than the Japanese language, and this is due to the abundance of circles in the letters of the Korean language, which makes it very easy to recognize, and you can probably guess where you are just by looking at some of these signs. Another great clue are going to be green license plates. Green license plates are not found on every single vehicle, but they are common in South Korea. The only other country offhand I can think of that might have some green license plates is Norway, which I hope you don't get those two countries confused. You're going to notice a trend here with some of these poles in these Eastern Asian countries, because here in South Korea, we do have this alternating yellow and black pole pattern as well. This one, though, is not straight. It's more of a twisty, turny, diagonal stripe that does not go all the way to the ground. And I say that very specifically because the next country we talk about will go all the way to the ground, but South Korea does not. Japan doesn't either, but the Japan one does look a little bit different. Now, South Korea has gotten new coverage, but it has not been released, and this is due to security concerns with the South Korean government. In fact, Google Street View and Google Maps in general doesn't even work in this country. So they are very strict when it comes to what Google is able to publish, and as a result, we probably won't see any new coverage in South Korea anytime soon. We're gonna have to live with the older coverage that is mostly Generation 3. And now we're gonna move down to Taiwan, the island over here. Now, this is a country that has full coverage, as you can see, very, very dense. This area in the east is very mountainous, so obviously there's not too many roads over here, but where the roads are, almost every single thing is covered, including these county islands here. Here we have Penghu, here we have Kinmen Island over here. These are all covered and are explorable in Google Street View, and as a result, OpenGuessr. Now, just like South Korea, Taiwan does drive on the right, but unlike South Korea, their yellow and black pole markings do go down all the way to the ground. This is a very, very famous pole in the OpenGuessr and GeoGuessr communities because the Taiwanese pole is everywhere. You can see it goes over there, over there, over there. These poles are all over the country. Now, Taiwan typically uses double yellow road lines in their roads. Obviously, small little roads won't have that, but most of them do, and the signs in Taiwan are also bilingual. So you'll see the traditional Chinese language here in Taiwan, but you will also sometimes see English. Now, just when you thought Taiwan polls couldn't get any better, we also have a way to region guess the country. Now, usually Taiwan will have a blue sticker just like this on most of their polls. This is unique to Taiwan, but there is a way to actually take these letters and numbers and region guess where you are in Taiwan based off of this. So if that interests you, those metas are out there. Taiwan is definitely much more tropical than South Korea and Japan, and honestly, if you know this poll meta right here, you should be fine. You should be able to recognize Taiwan. Now, you'll notice that mainland China has no blue lines at all, which is a little unfortunate because it is such a big country and has a lot of diversity. But wait, what is this down here? There are some blue lines down here. This is Hong Kong and this is Macau. Both of these places do have coverage, so let's talk about them. First off, we have Macau, which is notably one of the oldest generation tube coverages in the game and has not been updated in well over a decade, almost 2 decades now. Macau has not been updated, so the camera quality is definitely not going to be good. You will see a lot of black license plates, which is different than Hong Kong. This is the traditional Chinese license plate with black on the back and I think even the front, but I'm not too sure. Yeah, it looks like they do. So Macau does have black license plates. You might see the occasional yellow one on a taxi, for example. But now let's go over to Hong Kong, because in Hong Kong, as you can see, every vehicle will pretty much have a yellow license plate in the back. If you look in the front, they are white. So if you're looking this way, it can be hard to tell. But if you're looking this way, quite obviously, we're going to be in Hong Kong here and not Macau. Of course, cars can travel from one city to the other, so be careful about that. But typically, a great clue to differentiate each other is going to be those yellow license plates. Now, this is definitely due to the UK's presence and control of Hong Kong for such a long time. Yellow back license plates, of course, a very good clue for the UK and also here in Hong Kong. These double yellow road lines on the outside is famously used in the UK and also here in Hong Kong. So there are quite a few similarities. Now, of course, you will see the same languages in Hong Kong as you will in Taiwan, traditional Chinese with some English sprinkled in as well. But the difference here being that Hong Kong and Macau both drive on the left side of the road, which, if you remember correctly, Taiwan drives on the right. So that can be a very good clue when telling the difference between Hong Kong and Taiwan. Now, Hong Kong gets so much regularly updated coverage that if you go down and click on this exact location, you'll notice that there are so many times that a Google vehicle has driven down this road, starting in 2009 right here and going all the way to 2003. And of course, it still gets updates to this very day. Hong Kong is loved by Google for some reason. The Hong Kong road sign is a very good clue for this country. It is this white diagonal thing with a black background. You will be able to see the word in English and Chinese, usually with some numbers next to it as well. The actual highway signs are going to be blue with white text. These are very good signs you are in Hong Kong, because typically if you are in this little territory of China, you will be in an urban area. There are some Beatty locations that are in a rural area that can be very difficult. So Hong Kong might be the toughest place to get in this video, the opposite of Mongolia. But if you are in an urban area, at least it should be easy. Now, outside of those two locations, China, I shouldn't say has no coverage, because if we do zoom in to Beijing, for example, there are some blue lines here. These are just trekker locations, guys. So this isn't going to be a Google Street View vehicle. It's going to be somebody walking around with a backpack on. You might see these spread out throughout the country. They're going to be very rare, so I wouldn't consider learning it for a beginner's guide, but they do exist. And the final country to talk about today is going to be Bhutan, which is tucked away just south of China, just north of India over here. Now, I considered discussing this country in the Southeast Asia guide video, but I think Bhutan is mostly confused with countries in this video, so it's more useful to talk about this country today. Now, just like South Korea, the coverage in Bhutan is quite old and outdated, over a decade old, and I don't know if there are any plans by Google to come back and retake the coverage. But in Bhutan, you will see a silver car throughout the country. Sometimes it might appear white, but it definitely is a silver vehicle that you will see in the back. Now, Bhutan is a sparsely populated country. There are only a few cities in the country. As you can see by these blue lines, it's mostly mountainous. The only flat areas you will see are going to be down south near the Indian borders in some of these cities. So for the most part, you will be in mountainous territory when in this country. A lot of Bhutan was taken on a cloudy day. This one happens to be extremely cloudy, very, very foggy, and you will oftentimes be up in the mountains on these twisty and turny roads. So that's a very good sign that you are in Bhutan. If you find yourself in an urban area, you might see cars that have red license plates. In fact, you should see cars that have red license plates. Occasionally, you might see a taxi or another vehicle like that with a yellow one. but Bhutan is really the only country that uses red license plates like this on every single one of their normal vehicles. Bhutan architecture is very distinct actually, and you will see these type of buildings all throughout the country, and the people that live in Bhutan are typically also wearing some sort of traditional attire as well. Now, if you are up in the mountains far away from civilization here in Bhutan, there are a few things you can look for. One being these sort of rock bollards here on the side of the road. I can only assume is to protect you from falling off of the cliff here. These are very, very common in Bhutan. Another great clue you will see often on the sides of the roads are going to be these waystones, which will tell you exactly where you are. Here we are in the Lingathang, and we are 0 kilometers away from this city, which means that should be it right there. So yeah, that is where we are currently. Now, sometimes these cities are hard to find, especially if the number is very small, like 0. So who knows if you can find that on the map in any relative good speed, but it does tell you where you are. Now, this is an extremely Bhutanese round right here. Why is that? Well, first of all, we have the shrine right here. Shrines like this are going to be sprinkled throughout the country very commonly. And flags, look at all of these flags. It is super common in Bhutan to see flags like this. And yeah, they're even on this truck over here. Very interesting. Also, cows. Cows are just roaming the countryside of Bhutan. They're everywhere. So if you do see a cow, you know, there are cows everywhere in the world, but there are quite a few just on the streets of Bhutan. So I think with all these tips today, you should be pretty well-rounded as a beginner in Eastern Asia. You should be able to recognize at least a basic round in every single country. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and hope you learned something. If you did, make sure to leave a like. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.